This Bitcoin OG made a wild claim that the Bitcoin price is being suppressed. But is this a sign that the whales are suppressing the price to less than 100,000 so they could scoop up more Bitcoin? First, let's dive into the claim made by the man, the myth, the legend himself, Samson Mow, where he tweeted out yesterday that everyone can feel something is off with a huge disconnect between the buy-side demand and the price. Everyone can see something is off by looking at the price going sideways, but not everyone is willing to say the words price suppression, though. And he had his fair share of detractors here, where the chart boys are coming out from the woodworks here. We've got the legend Checkmate asking, hey, is the price being suppressed? Probably not. Unfortunately, we have the tools to gauge why the market hasn't already rallied the way many folks expect. Now, part of what he's saying and what Checkmate is lining out here is this RODL ratio here. It's looking at the amount of long-term holders. And these long-term holders are actually selling off right now. So we're seeing the Bitcoin price chop sideways here slightly, and people are wondering why. We are hearing the news of a ton of companies and people and large institutions scooping up Bitcoin. But you have to look at the timing of all of this, folks. You have to look at how everything is lined out here. Why are we hearing about Goldman Sachs, Cantor Fitzgerald, a lot of these big players buying Bitcoin right now? Why are we hearing about it? It's because of the filings that came out in Q4. So in Q4, we saw massive amounts of Bitcoin ETFs buying, and that was all disclosed within the past couple weeks. And so people are theorizing that, hey, all right, we're hearing Goldman Sachs double up on their Bitcoin spot ETFs. We're hearing Cantor Fitzgerald double up on their MicroStrategy. We're hearing the Norwegian Sovereign Wealth Fund, and we'll dive into all of those, doubling up on MicroStrategy, Bitcoin ETFs, and Bitcoin, all of this. We're hearing rumblings of Trump potentially putting Bitcoin in a strategic reserve and in the United States Sovereign Wealth Fund. Why aren't we seeing the price shoot to the skies? Well, we are looking at the long-term holders here sell off just slightly, and the timing of these announcements all are coming into play. So Bitcoin claims that, here's from Checkmate here, where he says, Old Mate claims Bitcoin price suppression, but at the same time ignores that the tens of thousands of Bitcoin being sold up every single day. Show your numbers to verify the claim. Well, if you look at this, right, we're seeing a large amounts of sell-off here fairly recently. And we're seeing the price kind of be reflected in this choppiness here, where we're seeing the supply chains here between November and February of this year. But the interesting aspect of all of this is just who we're seeing coming in. We're not seeing the traditional shrimps, the people maybe watching this video coming in and buying Bitcoin. We're seeing large institutions come in and really start to buy Bitcoin, smash that buy button, really do it, right? The institution significantly increases Bitcoin holdings and Bitcoin spot ETFs in Q4, with the positions rising over 200% compared to Q3, right? We have Goldman Sachs increases Bitcoin exposure by over 2 billion, folks. 2 billion. That's like Billy the Goat style here. We've got Goldman Sachs, one of the largest and oldest institutional firms, doubling up on their Bitcoin. So why aren't we seeing the Bitcoin price run up? Well, look at the timing of this, right? We're seeing Bitcoin and these ETFs all happening. This happened in Q4, right? It's not happening this past week. It's not happening in the month of January. It's happening in Q4, right? And what did we see in the price in Q4? Let's look at the price action here as we're crashing down to 95,000. If we look at the past 6 months, what happened Q4 here? Here's October, 60,000. October, November, December, all these whales are buying here. We see Bitcoin even peak December 15th. almost before the end of the year. So was this just institutions FOMO buying in, causing this run up? That's why they were doubling it here. We're seeing institutions smash that buy button, really go all in on their Bitcoin positions before the end of the year to try to increase their positions before going into the new year. And now, are they taking their foot off the gas a bit? Maybe that's a theory here that not very many people are talking about. We're hearing all this bullish and positive news of all these institutions, people, giant money managers buy Bitcoin today and weeks before. But the one thing that they aren't looking at is, hey, these dates, when they were buying, that's what was happening in the Bitcoin price, right? Binance even released a report, CZ, saying, hey, according to Blockbeat's recent 13F filing submitted by U.S. Securities Exchange revealed a significant increase in institutional holdings of spot Bitcoin ETFs during the fourth quarter of 2024. What's the time now, folks? It's Q1 2025, right? So this is all backwards looking data. So we can only look and analyze what this data was doing, or what this was doing when this data was actually timely, right? So the timeliness of this data shows that, hey, when institutions were buying it up, when people were rubbing elbows with Larry Fink over here, the Finkster, they were buying these BlackRock spot ETFs. Norway was stacking Bitcoin and going all in on MicroStrategy. They continued to buy up. So the world's largest sovereign wealth fund was doubling down on one of the biggest, essentially a Bitcoin proxy company at this point. At that time, it was called MicroStrategy. They've since changed the name to Strategy. I know I get a lot of comments. Everybody's saying, hey, this guy looks unprofessional with the backwards hat and calling it Strategy. Well, if you came to this and looked for professionality, folks, I'm sorry, you're not going to necessarily find it here. But the Norwegian Sovereign Wealth Fund has been stacking MicroStrategy. It's now called Strategy. I understand that. But we also got Cantor Fitzgerald, who is now purchased $1 billion worth of MicroStrategy shares in Q4. And so what did that result in? It resulted in Michael Saylor going through this tracker here and smash buying Bitcoin time and time again throughout this entire beginning of the year. But that's just one entity here, folks. That's just Strategy buying Bitcoin. All these other big players that we saw coming in, doubling and tripling down on their Bitcoin spot ETFs holdings, they could have taken the foot off the gas. And we're also seeing, as the man Checkmate is showing, we're seeing the hodlers sell off here in the early part of this year. Now, why are they doing that, right? Maybe they're waiting for the beginning of the year because of tax purposes to not sell and then need to pay that tax burden now. Maybe they wanted to buy something to start the new year off, right? But it's interesting. We're seeing Bitcoin float around this price here, and all this bullish news is coming out. But the bullish news is all from a couple months ago. It's not from right now, right? Michael Saylor increasing these buys. I know we know and love the Giga Chad himself, Michael Saylor. But if you look at the evidence here, folks, all of the other big dogs, you know, you don't want no puppies. You want that big dog buying up that Bitcoin to pump all of our bags. Well, they were doing it in Q4 of last year. So they could have taken the foot off the gas here. They're not leaving Michael Saylor hanging, so to speak. But I think a lot of people are potentially trying to slowly pump their bags here, get Bitcoin under that 100K mark, because they know what Bitcoin's going to do, right? We've seen Bitcoin shoot that big run up. So are these institutions working together in order to purchase more Bitcoin at less than 100K? It's a viable question. We've seen the amount, and all of these people continue to double and triple down on their position in strictly one quarter. Goldman Sachs, I did a video on this earlier this week, has literally doubled their Bitcoin holdings every single quarter since the Bitcoin spot ETFs has happened. Literally every single one. They doubled their holdings, doubled their holdings, doubled their holdings. And we had Larry Fink come out and say sovereign wealth funds, are looking to allocate 2 to 5% of their entire holdings to Bitcoin and Bitcoin ETFs. But it's not happening overnight. They're not smash buying right now, right? These institutions are very strategic when how they do these buyings. And that's why I think the interesting aspect of creating this, potential sovereign wealth fund or Bitcoin strategic reserve would honestly throw a wrench in a lot of that. But that's maybe time for another video, right? In the interim, what are we seeing, right? We're seeing Samson Mow saying, hey, the graphs aren't evidence, just tea leaves, right? We don't know what Bitcoin's doing. We don't know what people are doing in the background. We can only theorize here as to what is going on, right? We can look at the evidence. The evidence is last time around in Q4, we saw people like Goldman Sachs. We saw a bunch of institutions double and triple down in Q4 of last year. And then what happened in Q4? What happened in Q4, folks? We all know. Went from 60,000 to 105, right? More than a 50% increase in a 3-month period. Since then, we're floating a little stagnant year to date, only up 2%, right? But if you look at like the S&P 500, what would this average out to be? This is 2 months into the year. If we've got up in a percent a year, that's a 12% gain throughout the entire year. Obviously, Bitcoin is going to do what Bitcoin does, and I'm not too worried about it. It's just in the interim, we've got some interesting data to look at here. We've got the long-term hodlers selling off for the first time kind of here in quite some time. We've got a lot of institutional holders now having access to Bitcoin that we maybe never have had before on time. And we have a lot of Bitcoin whales selling their Bitcoin. Their realized profit of loss here crashing down and selling. We have the long-term holder distribution strictly go down here significantly. We have more and more Bitcoiners coming in and more institutions coming in and buying Bitcoin. Now, with institutions, right, they're not going to necessarily be day traders, but the difference is that they have a lot of money to throw around, right? They have a lot of, Skrilla Manila to come and put on the table to buy Bitcoin and do all these different things. So as we move into more institutional holders buying Bitcoin, that's going to increase the volatility, increase these longer dead periods. There's going to be a lot of changes in the market, whereas before we had a few whales that would be able to move the markets. Now we have people that have true cash that can just throw it around here, folks. So let's take a look at the chat here. We got KP Monty saying, is Bitcoin being suppressed? Does a bear shit in the woods? Hey, I don't necessarily know that it's been fully suppressed. I think that there's going to be a few different factors, and I think maybe I'll do a video on this later today. The Coinbase filing here is very interesting on how that has, now been eliminated as a potential risk. Ron is saying, talk about the market crash now. We heard about the rest. Yeah. Hey, I'm not saying that we're going to have a complete market crash. I think that, we're going to lower interest rates soon, and that's going to keep inflation very high. If you look at, I love to show this graph. People who have come to the chat here know that I love this website, govflation.com. I cleared my cookies, so it didn't pop up for me right away. But govflation.com, we'll get that up on the screen here in a second. So we look at, it's obviously got my man Jay Powell's here, the money printer. But look at the CPI numbers here, folks. January, we saw 3%. Real CPI of how they calculated it back in 1982, 10.67. Look, all the way they keep changing it and changing it and changing it. They make the numbers try to look a little bit lower than it is. We're seeing the amount of inflation just continue to rise here, folks. So I think the combination of lowering interest rates with inflation not being under control is not a positive, right? Hey, Dale Blast says, I hate to say it, but the chart looked like we peaked. Here's why I don't think we'll be peaked, folks. I think that we're looking at a lot of different factors and a lot of people, a lot of money on the sidelines that we've never seen before. So I think that, with this, maybe they're trying to load up here, but Bitcoin's going to do what Bitcoin does, right? As my man, what up, all-nighter hider here in the chat saying, smoke that like Cheech and Chong. I appreciate you guys coming in there and saying that. Bitcoin Brandon here on Twitter. We've got a couple hundred of you guys on both Twitter and YouTube saying patience is key. Buy Bitcoin, put in cold storage, live your life. Hey, I mean, I agree with you, folks. I think that, Bitcoin is going to do what Bitcoin does, right? You look at this 1 year chart up 80%, even with the quote unquote price suppression here. The best aspect of Bitcoin is the true freedom technology that it allows you to have, right? And part of that is putting it in cold storage. And that could be difficult for some folks. It could be a big task to chew off. Having a retirement plan and everything else could be a big issue here. That's why I've partnered with my friends over at the Bitcoin Way. You can go to thebitcoinway.com/green candle. They'll give you a free 30-minute consultation. They'll help you get everything in cold storage. I definitely hope you guys book a consultation with them just to see if they can help you out. They offer Plan B passports. They offer a bunch of different services. They have 25 years of experience in the cybersecurity space. So if you're worried about your computer getting hacked, all these different kinds of things, right? The Bitcoin Way can help you store Bitcoin in the most secure way possible. And they could do it for an affordable price and help you guys out. So get the free 30-minute consultation, see if the service is right for you. And don't listen to these bears who are saying that the Bitcoin price is not going to change here soon, because as Samson Mow always says, right? The Omega, the God candle, it's coming soon. It seems like the price suppression, right? If you look at the price movement, we peak and then we stay steady and chop sideways. It's good. And you could say it's consolidation, but it looks very manufactured. And it's hard not to agree with him. As a guy that's been in the Bitcoin space for a while, Samson has seen a lot of things go up and down. And we got Mick Keys in here. It's so obviously that multiple types of manipulations are happening. The question is, why aren't they identified and forced to stop? Hey, my last name's Keys as well. You add an extra E in there, but I like maybe a long lost brethren or cousin or something here. We got Mick. But yeah, I mean, I think that if we're looking at everything here, we're looking at the market now having massive, massive amounts of eyeballs and FOMO money now on the sidelines. Now, with nation states, with traditional finance, with all these big players now starting to come in and buy Bitcoin, it's going to be interesting. They're not going to let the Bitcoin price just continue to run up and up and up and up and up. I honestly think that we potentially could see some sort of crash still here fairly soon, maybe over the summer. I don't think that we're going to see just the market run up and up and up and up. I think that, once the Bitcoin strategic reserve is passed, if it actually gets passed this year, maybe it won't. We're seeing the poly market odds kind of crash on that. They're going to tell you, hey, we're looking to buy 200,000 Bitcoin every single year for 5 years. So we get up to 1 million. Don't you think Wall Street will try to front run that stuff and maybe manipulate it and then crash it? Don't you think that the powers that be, if they hate President Trump, will try to bring that thing down? I mean, I definitely think that it's something that we should consider and be very cautious of here, because, we're seeing the long-term hodlers really start to sell off a little bit. Now, why are they doing that? What do they know? They've been in the game for a while. We're seeing Samson Mow saying the price is being suppressed. What are they doing here? As my man All-Nighter Hider is saying, the legacy system protects itself and Bitcoin is still relatively new AF. Yeah, I mean, I agree with you here, right? I mean, we're still seeing the legacy system really, learning about Bitcoin, right? It's all new here. It's all new. It's definitely a new system. We're seeing a lot of different things here going on. So I appreciate you guys all tuning in. Actually, I want to draw some attention to this new podcast that I was on here. I was on Beyond the Wealth. There's some friends over there. This Adapt or Die. They are a non-Bitcoin channel. So I would encourage you guys to go check them out. I put this in the chat here. Go check out that interview. Another one, go like it, comment on there, subscribe to their channel, boost that one in the algorithm, because it's not a Bitcoin specific channel. And I want to try to just get the Bitcoin only message out there to a new crowd of people. So go on and check it out. Smash the like, smash the subscribe button here as well. And thank you guys all for tuning in. And I'll potentially be back here later tonight for a late night Friday rip. So I hope to see you guys again here in a few hours. So as my man All Nighter Hider says,